All right, it was a good day for U.S. stocks. In fact, a very good day for U.S. stocks. But much of the economic focus remains on Japan, the country still trying to bring its nuclear reactors under control and recover from the March 11th 9.0 magnitude earthquake. Let's find out from my next guest how disruptions in Japan's economy could affect the supply chain even here in the United States. David Semmens is the U.S. economist at Standard Chartered Bank, and he is rated a Bloomberg best for his forecast. David, good to have you with us, as always. Let's do Japan first and see how that connects with what's happening here in the United States. Big story today, front page New York Times, talking about how the disruption in Japan could affect companies in the United States or around the world because so many of the components, so many of the manufactured parts come from Japan. So it's not just Japanese companies operating here, U.S. companies. What do you think the impact is?
I mean, I think the main problem is we're going to be seeing more in the manufacturing sector than the service side, which has got to be taken as at least some sort of positive there. But the fact that you're going to see the manufacturing sector waiting on components that they need coming from Japan, it's not like in the US where you have ports on both sides and you can perhaps route ships through the Suez Canal. It's going to be more of a problem because you've had so much damage to the ports. And also, people aren't exactly focused on work and getting things out. You've only seen plants reopening today in some of the auto manufacturers. And so the problem there is people have got maybe bigger fish to fry.
When you have, estimated 8,000 to 10,000 fatalities, plus an untold number of people who have had to shift their homes and are living in shelters, starting up your factory is not necessarily your first priority.
Exactly, and also one of the other problems for the US economy is you've got to think how this is going to re-affect people's evaluation of how they pursue their energy strategy going forward. It should hopefully see much more of a focus on clean energy, but in the short term, if people move away from nuclear power, then that's going to see more upward pressure on oil prices, which obviously no one wants to see because it will drag on the economy.
Now, do the connection for me, because I don't understand. Nuclear power and oil, why is there a connection? We get electricity from nuclear power. We use oil to power our automobiles.
Well, you can still burn oil and you can burn coal. They're not perfect substitutes, but they are complementary factors within supplying energy. And so people are going to look at moving away from using nuclear power in the short term and perhaps burning more coal, burning more oil, simply to make sure that there aren't brownouts with regards to the energy supply. And so that's obviously critical, keeping...
And clearly in Japan, that's something they're going to have to focus on because they've had these rolling blackouts throughout the country.
Exactly, and they're going to want to keep their power supply secure, to keep hospitals running and to get business back up and going forward. And so that's really key for what happens in the short term. And obviously Japan is the third biggest importer of oil anyway. So they're going to have an increased demand there simply because the power plants are not going to be back online and they are going to be much more cautious with regards to how they use those power plants going forward.
Now, it's not enough that we've got a natural catastrophe and we're dealing with the aftermath there in Japan. What about what's happening in Libya and the effects there on oil production? 1.8, 1.9 millions of barrels of oil a day coming out of Libya. At least at the moment, that looks to be off the market.
Right, exactly. And it's very much a marginal market when you look at it next to Saudi Arabia, but it's more if these problems spread into other countries in the area.
Well, like Italy, right? I mean, Italy imports much of its oil from Libya.
Exactly, but I mean, I'm focused on the US, so I'm thinking about it as a concern from the US point of view, and it's more of a concern that Saudi stays well managed and off the problem radar at present.
Right, you don't want those Saudi troops that are in Bahrain necessarily called back to deal with unrest in Saudi Arabia itself.
Exactly. Having Libya on the front page is a much better position than having Saudi, because Saudi is a much bigger supplier, and also Saudi has basically made the commitment that they will be picking up some of the slack going forward while there are problems in the region, which is obviously a very positive thing for capping the price of oil going forward. But it definitely places a floor on how the prices can come down, because people always have that underlying uncertainty going forward.
All right, so 2% of global oil supply coming from Libya. How does that affect prices here in the U.S.? We're $102, $103 a barrel right now for oil, about $4 a gallon in many major metropolitan regions, particularly on the East Coast. I mean, what's that going to do to U.S. economic performance?
I mean, the main problem is it's eating into people's disposable income. Because people have to drive. They don't tend to change how much they drive when prices are rising, they will cut back on summer trips, but your weekly commute, you can't cut that out. You maybe will make more of an effort carpooling, but that really only helps very much at the margin, especially in the States, which is such a massive country. And so unfortunately, it sees people reducing their core spending, which is when you look at retail sales, you actually strip out gasoline spending, because you can't adjust for that. That's not a choice that people make. People make that spending and take it away from their other consumption.
Everything's interconnected. I want to thank you very much, David Semmens, joining us from Standard Chartered Bank. Always a pleasure to get your views. We're going to have to talk about housing next time. Thanks very much.